Hi, this is Gregor from BassTheWorld.com, and today we're checking the Bassics BPA-01 live and recording bass preamp. Let's check it out. The Bassics pedal was designed by a British studio legend, Malcolm Toft, and this guy became very famous in the 60s and 70s working at Trident Studios in London at the time, where he did stuff like engineering David Bowie's Space Oddity album or mixing Hey Jude for the Beatles and yeah, stuff like this. But he wasn't just an engineer and a studio worker. At some point when they needed a bigger console and he couldn't find something appropriate for the studio, he built a console by himself, and these Trident consoles became almost as popular as the music he was working on, so that's cool. But however, now he's making bass preamps. Most of the switches and controls of the BPA-01 belong to the Equalizer, and since this is a bass device, we don't have the usual bass, mids and treble frequencies. Instead we have low, mid and upper bass, which is really funny. Each section is semi-parametric, that means you can control volume and the center frequency for each one of those. But not just that, in addition we have an additional foot switch for each frequency range. On first sight this might seem a little bit ridiculous, but taking into account the studio background of Malcolm, this all makes sense. In the studio you don't want anything in the signal path that you're not using, to keep your signal as natural and true as possible. Each section lights up in a different color when it's engaged, so you can always easily monitor what the pedal is doing right now. In addition to these foot switches, there's also a master switch to bypass the entire EQ, which is brilliant. So let's check the compressor. The compressor on the BPA-01 is a simple one-knob design, so all you can control is the threshold, so basically the amount of compression. And there's also a little switch here that enables you to decide if you want to have the compression before or after the EQ, which is brilliant. I wasn't like super overwhelmed, I have to say, with the sound of the compressor, so I contacted my friend Alan Greensall, who was also involved in the production of this piece here. And he told me that I shouldn't take the compressor like an amazing studio compressor, like something like an 1176, or it's more like a gentle, subtle pre-compression that you can do in this pedal, and if you're using the whole thing in the studio, then there will be other compressors to do the main gig. But this is just a little subtle thing, and I have to say for that it actually works very well, and I think it sounds a little bit like an DBX 160 or something like that, and indeed he told me that they're using exactly the same chip. Now we're coming to my favorite part of the pedal. everything, I guess, especially the little things. See that you have meters for every single section on the pedal, so you can gain stage your sound with all the confidence in the world. For studio guys, these are things that dreams are made of. This is amazing. And do you see all these little in and outputs on the back? We have input 1 with an impedancy switch, so you can use this one also with piezo pickups. Here's input 2, and this one has an on level control. You can choose between these two channels with this little switch here. We have an output that goes to your amp, FX send and return, and two different DI outs. One is a pre and one is a post out, and both of them have not just an XLR out but also TRS. There are millions of applications how you can use these outputs, especially in the studio. The Bassics pedal definitely isn't cheap here in Germany. It's something around 500 bucks. And yeah, this is a lot of money, but yeah, and this but needs to be, I guess, in all caps, because compared to other producers of studio devices, this is very affordable. I believe if this was built by Neve or any one of the very well-known and super hyped studio brands, this could cost like $3,000 or something. I don't know. I think personally that this is mainly aimed at studio musicians. This is where I mainly seen it, but who am I to judge, because I've seen actually much more pedal boards where these are installed already than guys using them in studio. However, I think it's a perfect tool for everyone who wants to be able to do very subtle changes, especially with the EQ. The EQ is amazing, and the whole thing is just super professional with all the outputs and inputs. And I think when you're a professional bass player and you're going to the studio frequently and you need something very solid and very versatile for live gigs, this could be it. I personally love it as a desktop device for recording. I just put it on my desk and I have all the controls in front of me, and this is actually much more comfortable when sitting in front of the computer than reaching to the side and playing with these things here. So that's really cool. And for all of you who have a studio background and know a little bit about preamps, and on a scale between a warm and fat Neve 1073 and an API 312 on the other side, which is very clean, I would put it somewhere in the middle, slightly more to the API side. But yeah, I think it's a very neutral sounding thing that you can basically use for any bass in any application. Yeah, I guess that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I will gladly get back to you. Otherwise, have a wonderful day and see you next time. Bye.